So, Darlene, Pat, and Phil, if you wouldn't mind just standing up for a second so our guests can put a name with a face. Please. Darlene. So, at this point in time,
we're his best friends.
At this point in time, the three of y'all probably should be a little nervous. But, no, Darlene and I, we joined the church back in January. And, you know, COVID and all this stuff happened. And, you know, we found a place that just did not kind of roll over through the pandemic. And I promise you, Phil, he didn't put me up to this, but Phil is one of the few pastors that Darlene and I have run across that just shows and expresses his love for the Lord. And we love that. You know, not to mention he's our age, that helps, but just enthusiasm and love, and then he shares that with all of us. And that's one of many reasons why we're here. Everybody else, the members and stuff, absolutely, we're here as well. So we really love that. I want to share that. Now Phil's here, it's so big, probably not going to fit through that door. But yeah, especially for the guests, you know, I just wanted to share that about Darlene. And also, on Wednesday night, we have small group.
Amen.
Yes, this is what Phil does. He's writing over the sermon. And he's waiting time. And he said, hey, no, we got small group. If you're not in a small group, then you're fine. We have on Tuesday mornings at 10, Wednesday nights at 7. Oh, don't forget about we got Acts 29 Wednesday nights at 7. You need to start bringing friends. We need to increase that. Yeah. Friday mornings at 10. So in case you're not in a small group, you need to find it.
Amen.
So speaking of small groups, this is where Pat comes into play. So one Wednesday night, we're here at small groups, and Darlene wasn't here this particular night. And Phil was talking about in Genesis, Adam and Eve. And Pat's up there just fiercely just taking notes. And I'm just kind of sitting back listening and just looking at my Bible. And when Phil finishes about a 10-minute speech about Adam and Eve, and it was a pause. So I spoke up. I said, Pat, with all that writing, note-taking you've been doing, I said, you did pick up the main point that Phil was making here. That woman was the cause of man to fall. Hannah was about 2 rows in front of me. She stood up and started climbing over the top of her. Trying to get back to her.
That makes sense.
But needless to say, she was restrained.
That makes sense. Eve gave Adam.
I just wanted to share this.
You have to get the story straight.
Probably in the law. That's right.
That's
So,
true. Woman do for
so what I wanted to share today, and I'm going to talk a little bit about mental health, addictions, dependency, and just kind of give you my life story. I am a deputy with the Campbell County Sheriff's Office. Been a deputy for about a little 4 years. Prior to that, my dad owned a service station in Rustburg, right in the town. For 25 years, I worked with him about 20 of those 25. Never really took on to be a mechanic. I was more of customer service. And that's actually how my wife and I met. Because we provided the service that we would go to businesses or whatever, just right in the town of Rustburg, pick up the vehicles, bring it back, do what needs to be done, and then we will, return the vehicle. And that's what I did one day when Darlene, she was working insurance at Farm Bureau, and I was there to pick up another lady, one of her co-workers' vehicles, and then that's when Darlene and our eyes met from like afar. And her life just went downhill. But no, she's actually great. She's a very good, strong supporter. We're completely opposite. She's 99% business, 1% of a joking personality. I'm completely opposite. So we balance each other out. She's there for me when I need that strong backbone. I'm there for her when she needs that strong backbone. So I absolutely love her. We've been married almost 11 years. So anyway, back to the service station. So my point with that is, I wasn't always a police officer or a deputy. And so I graduated Westbrook High School in 1992. Hey, you may find it hard to believe. I was very shy in school. My senior year, I looked like I was 12 years old. I weighed up maybe 120 pounds soaking wet. I didn't hit my last growth spurt until after I graduated. I graduated high school at 17. So about age 18-ish, that's where I hit my last growth spurt. And then, of course, I'm not 120 pounds anymore. But very shy. You know, didn't come out of my shell till probably age 19. And then, you know, you just kind of get in with a group of people and you just start experiencing life. So I started drinking a little bit. Not to mention, don't even remember who bought the alcohol because I wasn't even 21. But, you know, you show up at parties or get-togethers or bonfires or whatever, it's always there. And then, as I got older and I turned 21, I was living on my own. I moved out when I was 19. So I had to grow up pretty quick because I came from a really strong family upbringing. I mean, they did everything for me. So, and when I turned 21, I realized, it's like, I can kind of drink when I don't want to. And that's kind of how it started. You know, first it was weekends, it was with people, it's get-togethers, and then it was weekdays by myself at my apartment, things like that. Drinking slowly progressed, and my grandfather passed away in '98. I felt like I grieved pretty good and kind of dealt with that. First death of a close family member I ever had to deal with. But then after that, the drinking just increased. So just like with any addiction or any type of dependency, you build up a tolerance. You know, and you know, when I say I'm an addict, and a lot of people think, oh gosh, drugs. No, you know, we have alcohol, we have caffeine, we have food addictions, gambling addictions. There's all types of addictions. So the drinking just got worse and worse and worse. And I could sit here for hours and just tell you story after story after story. But, so finally, it got to the point, let's see, I got married, all for the wrong reasons. It lasted 11 months before we got separated. A few months after that, we got a divorce. So at that point, I was pretty much rock bottom, and I'm like, I need help. I need professional help. So I go to a psychiatrist. The gentleman diagnosed me as somebody who's like alcohol dependent / addict. Not really an alcoholic, because there's different types, but he just basically, from after I shared everything with him, he was like, you're somebody that drinks daily to deal with life. That's the best way you know how to put it. So to kind of give you a general idea of how bad the drinking was, he suggested I go to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. It's like, okay. But unless you are addicted to something or have a dependency on something, and you're that person, you do not know what it's like. You could be the spouse, you could be the parent, you could be a family member. And I had family members talking to me till they were blue in the face. Until this person, me, was ready to make that change. It don't matter how much or what somebody says to you. So the drinking just continued. It was so bad, this was summed up, that when I went to AA, I had my pool pack full of beer. I participated in AA, but I was sitting in the parking lot, so when everybody left, I drank my first one before I even left the park. That's how bad it was. One spring day, spring of '03, I'm driving over towards Brookville High School. I'm on Greenview Drive. All of a sudden, just something changed with me. I couldn't breathe. I felt like an elephant was on my chest. All my muscles were contracting. I mean, my hands were closing. And I'm driving. I'm by myself, I'm driving. My feet started kind of curling up in my shoes. My vision, I had no periphery. It was just a tunnel vision. All I could see was that door. I couldn't even see y'all. Luckily, I was at, I call it the side entrance or whatever of Lowe's, but the kind of little back way. Luckily, I could pull in there really quick. Had no clue. I just thought I was down. I was like, is this what death stop? It scared me so bad, I didn't even dial 911. At this point, I moved back in with my parents because of the divorce. They offered that for me to get my feet on the ground and try to help me out. So my first phone call, and the only phone call, was to my mom and dad. Tell them I love them. I said, I think I'm dying. I don't know what's going on with me. I was like, I'm probably not going to make it home. And I just wanted one last time to tell them I love them. Well, as you probably tell, I didn't die.
Amen, we're happy for that.
So obviously the very next day, I get in to see a doctor to find out what in the world was taking place. So I had a severe panic attack. Never had one before in my life. Had a few since then, nowhere near that bad. But it was so bad, it changed my life where I haven't drank since. And that was the #3. So, and I don't have a plan on drinking either. It scared me that bad. Even though I know it didn't kill me, but it literally scared me that bad. So, so that was spring of '03. Well, yeah, I was also addicted to some other things too. Nicotine. I didn't really smoke. I might have experimented a little bit with cigarettes, but it was different. It was smokeless tobacco. Same thing. You just build up a tolerance. You're dipping or chewing or whatever, more. So I decided to quit that at the same time as well. And then in the summer of '03, my parents, I was born and raised in the church. Always went to church. Always believed in God, heaven and hell, all that. And I always believed that Jesus came to this earth to die for our sins. All that took place. So I was kind of in and out of church a little bit during these years, and it lasted the drinking and everything approximately 10 years or so. The heavy drinking was probably the last 3 or 4. So just woke up one Sunday morning, I was like, I think I want to go to church. So I was a member at that time, Westport United Methodist Church, right there in the middle of Westport. Parents still members there, still go there. And so I think it kind of surprised them if I remember correctly, and I showed up for worship service. But what I did not expect was at the end of the service, when we had the invitational hymn to come up, if you needed to repent sins, whatever, just all of a sudden out of the blue, I just felt this overwhelming feeling. I don't know how to describe it. Next thing I know, I stand up and I'm walking down the center aisle to the front. Get down on my knees, and I just bust out crying. And that's when I rededicated my life to God. So even with that happening, I was on cloud 9 for a very good while, but eventually that kind of wears off. Something was still missing. I just could not put my hands on it. I still had this emptiness inside, and it wasn't because I wasn't married anymore. It was something a lot more deeper than that. So then, going back to my addictions, I turned to food because it was giving that comfort. That you hear people say they eat when they're stressed, whatever it may be. Mine is pizza. I just love pizza. But I love to eat. I love to eat unhealthy. As you probably can look and tell, I'm a little overweight. So I turned to food. And then it was caffeine. It wasn't dare to touch the alcohol, it wasn't dare to touch the nicotine, but I had, a couple other things. Even though rededicating my life to God, I still had that emptiness. I still had a void in my heart, and next thing you know, it's food, it's caffeine. Drinking coffee, morning, afternoon, evening, had no clue what it was doing to my sleep. Horrible. So, and I'm still struggling with the food and the caffeine. Now, I do drink 1 20-ounce cup of coffee in the morning, and that's it. Still drink a Diet Coke from time to time. Food I'm still struggling with. But I guess it's when I became a deputy in 2017, 5 months in the academy, and then I'm in the field division, out working the roads. Always, back in the early 90s, I went to school to be a police officer, just made bad choices. Back then, my mom said, hey, you better fall into the family business, get your life straight, whatever the case may be. And so then, 20 years passes by. In 2014, my dad retired that spring, had a business partner. He came to me in October and says, hey, had a change of heart, I don't really want to do this anymore. So we're like, holy cow, we had to make a huge family decision. Darlene and I take over the service station or just close it down and do something else. And through a lot of prayer, a lot of conversation, we decided to close. And I was unemployed the month of January 2015. And then February I actually became a jail officer. I didn't get hired at the sheriff's office that time around, so I ended up becoming a jail officer. I was a jail officer at the Winfall Adult Detention Center for about 14 months. And then open came up with the sheriff's office, put in for it, and got hired the second time. So like I said, been with them a little over 4 years. The biggest thing that scared me about being a deputy is once I learned this was divorce rate and suicide rate was extremely high among law enforcement. Absolutely scared me to death because I'm already dealing with some mental illness. I'm dealing with addictions. I'm dealing with dependency. So I refereed a little bit of high school basketball on the side. And this particular night, I had a game with my friend Goose, and him and his wife are here today. And I'm so loving that. And Darlene actually rode with us because the game was in Danby. So Goose and I got to talk a lot back and forth and traveling. And the biggest thing I believe on the calls that I was going to as a deputy in right-hand Campbell County was death. I had no earthly idea I would see as many dead people in the first 6 months of being a police officer. And so that just really got my mind to just rolling like, what in the world, And I started developing a lot of questions because me being type A personality, me being OCD, me being a planner, I want to know my future. And one of the hardest things for me to do, or have done, is to give up my life and trying to schedule things the way I want it to be and trust God. That's one of the things I'm struggling with, is trying to trust God. So that started a very good friendship between Goose and I. We got to where we would meet once a month, either for breakfast or for lunch, catch up on past times, had questions. Because Goose, he's a professor at Liberty University in the School of Divinity. So I give him a hard time to this day. I said, Goose, we got hundreds and hundreds of students, if not thousands, that are paying thousands and thousands of dollars to get educated in the School of Ministry. And I'm getting that same information free. It's just awesome information. So we laugh about that, but now he's been great. He's my mentor. He is my Christian mentor. So anytime I get hemmed up in something, I usually shoot him a text or give him a call. Say, hey, need some help. And he's just a great friend. He's been there for me, and it's been really, really very helpful. Because I just didn't think when being a deputy that I would see some of the ugliness. You hear about it, you read about it, but just right here in Campbell County, and then it just really helped me to deal with when somebody passes away. So to finish this up, what that really did for me is now, and I'm a school resource officer now. I forgot to mention that. This was my first year. So I get to be a mentor. I'm at Yellow Branch Elementary School. Absolutely love that age. They're my speed. I got someone asked me, they called me back. I said, Mike, can you help me with this? And I look at it, and we're talking like second grade. I'm like, you may need to get your teacher there. But I absolutely love being an SRO. Just because I'm a child at heart, I get to play with these young students. I high five, and I don't mean you're supposed to have contact, but I still have them come up, give me a hug, and high five them, and just, it's just awesome. It's just truly, truly awesome. And I wouldn't have it any other way. But so hopefully to conclude all this, for anybody that's here, or if you know somebody, family member, co-worker, friend, whatever, that is battling with addiction, that's battling with dependencies. It doesn't go away. You fight it every day. You deal with it every day. It doesn't get any easier. But knowing now that I have developed a relationship with God and the closeness I've become with the Lord,